Okay, so you sent us some seriously fascinating stuff on gaslighting. Seems like you want to go deeper than just, tossing that word around.
Yeah, wanting to untangle those tricky situations, how to know if it's a real disagreement or something more manipulative,
Yeah.
and how it affects people, not just the word itself.
Exactly. In fact, going through these sources, I kept thinking about that movie Gaslight, the Ingrid Bergman one.
Oh, such a classic, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of wild how a movie from, was it the 40s, still shapes how we see this whole concept.
Totally. Though here's something I bet our listeners don't know. The actual word gaslighting never said in the film, not even in the play it's based on.
True. And for years, the term itself was pretty obscure, like outside psychology stuff. Nobody really used it. Even the New York Times, they barely mentioned it for like 20 years back in the day.
Wow, from the big strain to almost forgotten. So when did it become like everyone's go-to for any argument?
That is the interesting part. See, gaslighting as a word pops up in the 50s, even got a mention on the Burns and Allen show, believe it or not.
Wow, now that's a throwback.
Right. But it's not till the 2010s, roughly, that its use explodes. Kind of lines up with, I think, more awareness of toxic relationships, online stuff, too.
Like the internet gave a name to something that's, well, probably always been around, just hidden.
Exactly. And this boom in casual use is why the APA's view on gaslighting is so important. Back in 2021, they tried to clarify, like, the OG meaning versus how it's thrown around now.
So how do they define it officially?
Initially, they tied it to really intense manipulation, the kind that could, like, contribute to serious mental health problems. Think of the husband in Gaslight, making his wife doubt her own mind.
That's chilling. Not just I disagree, but actively making someone think they're losing it.
Exactly. And it often works best when there's a power difference. Could be money, age, or even just being the boss, a doctor, that kind of thing.
Hey, even doctors, that's really messed up.
Oh, it's a real thing. Medical gaslighting, it's called. Imagine you go to the doctor, you feel awful, and they're like, it's all in your head.
Especially if you're already vulnerable, you'd start questioning everything.
And that's what they want. They break down your confidence, so you rely on them more and more. Over time, super damaging.
So not just disagreeing, it's a whole pattern meant to control, to warp how you see things.
Exactly. And that's where it gets hard to tell, right? Everyone argues, how do you know if it's actually gaslighting or just a stubborn partner, coworker, whoever?
That's what I'd want to know. Is there a clear line, or does it depend?
The key is spotting specific things they do, patterns. Like, in a normal disagreement, you listen, respect the other view, even if you don't agree.
Right, like, okay, I hear you, but I see it this way.
Exactly. But with gaslighting, they're trying to make you doubt your own memories, feelings, even your sanity. Like denying they said something you know they did, or telling you you're imagining things.
Man, that would mess you up. Did I make that up? Am I going crazy? Scary to even think about.
It is. And the longer it goes on, the more you internalize that self-doubt. That's why recognizing it early is huge. Knowing this isn't just a difference of opinion, it's something way worse.
And like you said, this can happen anywhere, not just romance. We've talked families, workplaces, but what about, like, society? This document also talks about gaslighting as a political thing.
Ah, yeah, and this is where it gets really interesting. People are using gaslighting more and more to describe political strategies.
Yeah.
Especially stuff about, like, twisting information, how the public sees things.
And I'm guessing this isn't about one side or the other.
Exactly. We're all about understanding the tactic, not taking sides. Some writers use it, for example, talking about how certain politicians talk.
Where they say things that, like, totally contradict the facts or even stuff they said before.
Right. Others say those really controlling governments, historically, that was gaslighting on a huge scale. Propaganda, lies, all to control what people believe.
It's kind of creepy, but you realize it can happen anywhere, at any level. And speaking of, I can't help but think about how much this shows up in pop culture. Like, we're trying to understand gaslighting through movies, music, everything.
It's true. Your sources even had some examples in there. What are some that stood out to you?
Well, the movie The Girl on the Train comes to mind right away. You've got the main character already struggling, and then her husband, he uses that to make her think she did awful things she didn't do.
Preying on her vulnerability, twisting her insecurities.
Yeah.
Classic gaslighting. Yeah.
Right. Awful. And then there were songs like that Gaslighter song by the Chicks.
Very on the nose, that title.
Right. The whole vibe of the song, it's that feeling of someone messing with your head in a relationship, making you doubt if you're the crazy one.
It's funny you mention that song because it shows just how mainstream gaslighting has become. Even Steely Dan had a song called Gaslighting Abby. But I bet back then, most people missed it.
That's so true. Back then, it wasn't a buzzword yet. But now. Which actually brings up a big question.
So, has it lost something? Using gaslighting for every little thing, does that make us miss the real danger when it's serious?
That's the thing, right? If every argument is gaslighting, how do we even know when it's really bad?
It's a worry, for sure. When a word is everywhere, it can lose its punch. And with gaslighting, that punch is about it being intentional, messed up control, not just someone being difficult.
So how do we walk that line? How do we know, especially when it's not like super obvious power stuff?
That's where the psychology is key. The APA, they talk about things like trivia invalidation, meaning they're always like, your thoughts are dumb, or withholding, where they act clueless so they don't deal with your feelings.
So it's not even arguing, it's making you feel like you're stupid, unheard.
Right. It's about making you doubt yourself, your reality.
Mhm.
Imagine constantly being told your memory's wrong, they deny promises they made, but you know what happened.
Oh, that's happened to me before. It messes with your head. You're like, wait, was I wrong? Am I too sensitive?
Exactly. That self-doubt, that's the goal. They create this world where only their view matters. The APA even links this to, like, anxiety, depression, even PTSD in really bad cases.
Makes sense. Being treated like that all the time, it would wreck anyone.
And the scary part is, the person might not even realize it's happening to them. They think they're the problem, anxious, whatever. Not that it's this outside force messing with them.
It's like one person says you're a horse, you laugh. 10 people say it, you start believing it. Except here, the gaslighter's making you feel like you're the crazy one.
Powerful stuff. And the longer it goes on, the worse the damage. People withdraw, isolate, or become totally dependent on the gaslighter, which just makes it stronger.
Stuck in this funhouse mirror world, never sure what's real. So what can you do? If you think this is happening, how do you break out of it?
First thing, knowing it's real. That what you're feeling is valid. Nobody, no matter who they are, can tell you your feelings are wrong.
Trust your gut, basically.
100%. Notice the red flags. The contradictions, walking on eggshells, that feeling something's off. Write things down, keep track.
Smart, so you have proof if you start doubting.
Exactly. And it's powerful seeing the pattern on paper. Separates your truth from theirs.
Taking back the narrative. But what about confronting them? Does that ever work?
Sadly, no, not usually. Gaslighters, they're pros at this. They won't admit anything, probably just make it worse.
So what then? Just leave.
If you can, yes, get away from that person, whether it's romance, family, even a bad job.
Easier said than done sometimes. What if it's family or someone you have to work with?
True. Then it's about boundaries. Less contact, not getting sucked into arguments that go nowhere, and putting your own well-being first.
Like a force field against the manipulation.
Good way to put it.
Yeah.
And don't underestimate support. Friends, family, therapists, talk to people.
That outside view is huge. Helps you realize you're not the messed up one, it's them.
Exactly. People who get it, who reinforce who you are, that's essential to healing from this stuff.
This whole talk has really made me think about how sneaky gaslighting is. It's not just a movie plot, it's something that can creep into your life without you even noticing.
That's why we got to pay attention. Trust our gut.
Mm.
Remember, we all deserve relationships built on respect, honesty, actually being real with each other.
Or you can speak your mind without being shut down or manipulated.
Exactly. And sometimes that means walking away, even if it's hard.
Which brings us back to where we started. Understanding gaslighting isn't just knowing the word, it's about knowing how to deal with it at any level.
Absolutely. That knowledge is power.
So, what now? We know about it, but how do we actually use this knowledge to do something good?
Great question. And that takes us to a really important part of this conversation.
It's like we've uncovered this whole other side of communication, this subtle manipulation that can really mess with your sense of self. So where do we go from here? How do we take this awareness of gaslighting and, I don't know, make it useful?
You're spot on. It's not enough to just recognize it when it's happening. It's about understanding the impact and how to deal with it.
Right, like I get the word, but real life is different.
Exactly. And that's why understanding it is so important. The more we know about how gaslighters work, the better we can spot it.
So like, become a gaslighting detective.
In a way, yeah. And part of that is looking at ourselves, honestly. Gaslighting works when it hits our insecurities, our fear of being wrong, being difficult.
That's so true. If you're already unsure of yourself, those tricks would hit even harder.
Exactly. So protecting ourselves also means building ourselves up, knowing our feelings are real, trusting our gut,
It's like that saying, you can't shame someone who already loves themselves.
Right. When we're confident that gaslighting stuff doesn't work as well, we can see it for what it is,
Yeah.
just trying to control us.
Which goes back to our listener wanting to go beyond just the word. It's not about yelling gaslighting every time we disagree.
No, definitely not. We have to be careful with the word, make sure we're using it right. Or else, it's like, what's the point? We miss the really bad cases.
Like crying wolf too many times. If we use it for everything, people won't take it seriously when it's the real deal.
Exactly. And that's dangerous. Because gaslighting, deep down, is about power. It's one person trying to control another for their own gain.
So not just hurt feelings, it's recognizing a pattern that can have really bad consequences.
Yes. And as we learn more about it, we have to be ready for gaslighting itself to change.
Oh, that's interesting. So the more we know, the sneakier they get.
It's kind of creepy, but it could happen. As we get better at spotting the obvious signs, they might find new ways to mess with us.
So it's like a game. We have to stay one step ahead.
You could say that, but the biggest thing is awareness. By talking about it, understanding how it works, trusting ourselves, that's how we deal with it, with strength and clarity.
That's a good takeaway. It's not about being scared of being gaslighted. It's about knowing ourselves so well that we see it if it happens.
Absolutely. And remember, you're not alone. There are resources, people to talk to, whole communities that understand.
And on that note, it's time to wrap up this deep dive.
But before we go, something for our listeners to think about. As we all become more aware of gaslighting, personally and as a society, how do we use that awareness to build better relationships? How do we make a world where manipulation and lies have no power?
That is something to think about. And with that, we'll leave you to continue your own deep dive into this topic. Until next time, stay curious and keep those questions coming.